Imagine, you're in France the summer of 1518. You look to the side and there you see hundreds of people ceaselessly dancing for what seems like no reason at all. Dozens of them have fallen to the ground from sheer exhaustion, and they get right back up and keep on dancing. Another man clutches his chest, having a heart attack, and falls to the ground dead. What you have just witnessed is the very first recorded case of mass hysteria. And even I, who often think myself to be an independent thinker, often succumbs to the masses when it comes to social situations. And I am definitely not alone. Every single human is susceptible to a mass hysteria epidemic. So over the next few minutes, I will first be going over what mass hysteria is and what causes it. Next, taking a look at a historical example of mass hysteria. And finally, looking at mass hysteria in more of a modern sense, especially as it relates to the rise of social media. Before we can get into any examples, we must first understand what mass hysteria is and what causes it. A Medical News Today article entitled "Mass Hysteria, an Epidemic of the Mind" defines mass hysteria as a conversion disorder in which a person has the physiological symptoms affecting their nervous system in the absence of any physical cause of illness. In short, this means that mass hysteria begins in the brain and works its way down to the body. And even though this hysteria starts in the mind, the symptoms are very much real. However, mass hysteria is often completely ignored because it has an extremely negative connotation. Both civilians and specialists are deterred from diagnosing it, so we often don't see cases of mass hysteria in the modern day. Now that we understand what mass hysteria is, let's take a look at a historical example. Take, for example, the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. Back in Mattoon, Illinois in 1917, a number of people reported experiencing symptoms such as coughing, wheezing, difficulty breathing, throwing up blood, and even paralysis. Every single one of these victims also claimed to have seen a masked man running off into the distance, and reported smelling a sweet odor in their homes prior to the onset of their symptoms. What was originally said to be a masked gasser on the loose turned out to be, well, just another case of mass hysteria, as the medical reports and the police reports came back and there was no causes of illness, nothing ever in any of the people's homes, and no evidence of there ever being a masked man. Eventually, the entire thing was chalked up to mass hysteria. Now that we saw a historical example of mass hysteria, let's take a look at it in more of a modern sense, especially in relationship to social media and the internet. This extreme collective behavior is normally seen in a limited geographic region, but social media and the internet have allowed for global spread of mass hysteria. A 2012 article from the New York Times entitled "What Happened to the Girls in Leroy" explains that a number of girls started experiencing symptoms that we often associate with Tourette's syndrome. But this was only after they saw a YouTube video, and video documentation was taken of these girls' experiences. Eventually, the videos began to spread, and the entire epidemic got even worse. In a world where we can get information from one end of the globe to the next, just like that, we have to keep in mind that mass hysteria is spread via social contact. So it's possible that the internet is and will continue to cause expansion of mass hysteria. So along with all the other negative side effects normally cited along with social media, well, it may be time to add mass hysteria to that list. So over the last few minutes, we first went over what mass hysteria is and what causes it. Next, took a look at a historical example and wrapped it up by looking at mass hysteria in a modern sense. We have to keep in mind that mass hysteria isn't something that can simply be treated with a pill or a vaccine. So if you see someone uncontrollably dancing, don't do something crazy like convict them of witchcraft, or tell everyone that it was a masked man spreading a mysterious gas. And definitely don't take that as an invitation to join them. That wouldn't be funny, although it could be seen as just a little bit hysterical.